Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the show where I speak with the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and share their stories of diversity and inclusion to help make the world a better place. My name is Leila Mackenzie, and today I am delighted to be joined by the absolutely fantastic Keith Antoine, who I had the pleasure of meeting with very recently as he was speaking at the Women's Leadership Association event, where he shared with us some fantastic stories about his remarkable career and some of the people that he's been coaching. Now, Keith, for those who may not know already and for our listeners, he is a performance coach with the very unusual experience of over 25 years working with both organisations and highly elite athletes to help them achieve their desired goals. With one eye on helping business leaders at all levels to improve their confidence and effective competence to hold effective performance and developmental conversations, and on the other half, preparing for the 2020 Paralympics in Tokyo. These are very busy times for Keith. Keith is also an international keynote speaker with the value add of enabling audiences to think through the pertinent issues and create plans for affecting positive change. His style is a very smooth blend of engaging and challenging and also fun business techniques that kind of really get people fired up and motivated, as they certainly were at the WLA event day where we heard Keith speak. And so welcome to the show, Keith. Without further ado, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much, Leila. It's a pleasure to be here.
And so, Keith, tell me, and all of our listeners, a little bit about what you've been up to recently. I know you've had many projects on the go, but it'd be great to learn about some of the things that you're doing right now and some of the initiatives that you're championing.
Okay, keeping me busy at the moment. There's one of the motor manufacturers I'm working with, their senior leaders, to help them be able to move the performance forward of their teams and also look at the balance between performance and development, and helping them to do that through enhancing their conversational style, conversational abilities. In amongst doing that, similar sort of program is about to really kick off with sort of a bulk of the civil servants from one of the sub-Saharan countries in Africa.
Fantastic.
And when I have a few moments in between doing that, I need to be making sure that Richard Whitehead is on schedule for getting through the World Championships in Dubai later on this year, and then defending his title in Tokyo in 2020. Wow,
that is fantastic. So just another ordinary day in the life So tell me more about that. I mean, that's absolutely fascinating. Obviously, you have to, keep these fabulous athletes kind of motivated and on point and focused. And I know you talked a lot about this at the WLA, which was fantastic. What are the kind of, the big hurdles and the challenges that they tend to find on a day-to-day basis? And how do you really kind of, inspire them and kind of motivate them to stay on point, really?
I think it's one of those things that my approach tends to be a little bit different in so much as you say, motivation is absolutely critical. But I'm a firm believer that the more, well, let me take that back a stage. Things like motivation, confidence, I think are pretty closely linked. And people tend to either be more internally focused or externally focused. Personally, I think if the bias can be internal, if the drivers can be internal, then the individuals are less dependent on others. That doesn't necessarily make one better than the other. For me, I think the key is to understand what your drivers are, for each person to understand what their drivers are and how to feed those. So if people are more externally driven, then that's okay. If they understand that, my question would then be, what are they doing to feed what they need? If they're intelligent, then it's the same thing again. So it doesn't just happen by chance. If people want to have high levels of confidence, then they can make that happen, but they have to be in charge of it. Mm-hmm. As for motivation, I think, as I said at the WLA event, for me, there are three critical parts to that. The first is really each individual having clarity about what it is they're trying to achieve. Not necessarily how they'll do it, but real clarity about what they're trying to achieve. The next element is they need to have, it needs to have some meaning for them. Even if other people are involved, it needs to really mean something for them. And the third element is they really need to believe that it's possible. Mm-hmm. Not sort of finger in the air, I wish, wouldn't it be nice? But truly, they need to believe they can do it. And the way that I work with athletes and also with people in organizations is to help them so rather than me trying to motivate them, I see my part in the equation is to help them to think through each of those elements so that they're really clear about what they want to do, they're really clear about what it means to them, and they really honestly believe that they can do it, or that whatever they're doing will make the difference they want it to make. When they're clear about those things, they don't need me to motivate them. They will generate enough internal motivation to do the things they need to do. Because if the athletes, if like Richard, for example, needs me to motivate him when it's cold and wet and dark and it's hurting, then the most I can do is be sitting on the sidelines going, come on, son, do that again. And he's just as likely to throw something at me. So, I think he needs to really want to make this stuff happen. Mm-hmm. And that's how we work.
I like that. And I think you're very right. You're kind of actually throwing it back to the individual so that they can achieve this clarity that you talk about, as opposed to actually delivering what you personally believe could be motivational. Because like you say, it's very bespoke and personal to that individual. So if they are to kind of, finally have the belief, but also something that has meaning and purpose, and they're also to kind of have clarity on the what, then that is how you help them kind of shape and move forwards with their desires. Because ultimately, I guess they need to self-motivate, really.
Absolutely. And I think this is an increasing challenge in an increasingly diverse world. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at, and I'm not being critical, you look at the makeup of most leaders, and people would always go, yes, the leaders need to motivate the people. But you look at the makeup of most leaders and there would be you could take the stats and they would look a certain way and be of a certain background. Mm-hmm. Well, if the workforce is increasingly diverse, then how does one person from one background understand what's going on internally for people who are increasingly diverse from increasingly different backgrounds? It's just not going to work.
Absolutely. And, I couldn't agree more. There really needs to be this plethora of different types of role models, both in business and in other facets of life that, look, sound, speak differently, so that actually, each individual has someone who they can relate to in some way, shape or form. Because that's what it's about, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if the leader has the ability to enable the people that they're working with to think for themselves, to understand what things mean to them, to find their own drivers, then it doesn't matter how diverse the workforce are. The leader still has good value add and they can still enable people to do the things that they need to do. But if it has to come from an individual, then that is just not going to work. And that doesn't matter whether you're talking here in the UK or in any other nation. as the world gets smaller and everyone runs around and does more stuff, then the ability to interact with people from different backgrounds, and different stories, then that's, I think that is the thing that is going to increasingly find out. It's the thing that's going to increasingly be the differentiator between leaders that are truly successful, particularly leaders in large organizations.
Fascinating. And I know that you've touched on it there, but what does diversity and inclusion really mean to you? Because obviously you spend lots and lots of time with individuals at senior level from all different types of organisation and from the sporting profession. What does diversity and inclusion, actually mean to you?
It's that is a very good question, Leila. It's a very good question. I suppose it's in the way that I work. I am really always looking for how does the individual take control of their own environment and take control of things, and set things up for themselves. So, yes, leaders have a role. I think the challenge with diversity and inclusion is that, in a way, not dissimilar to what I just said about motivation, if the head of an organization, I don't just mean one individual, so you take the board of an organization, they say, okay, we want to get diversity inclusion sorted. So they come up with a plan, and it's all with great intent, and it looks like a really good plan, and then they put the plan into effect. But again, how can they know what will work for a diverse workforce? So the challenge for me is almost turning that on its head and having people contribute to what diverse means and what inclusion means. So I guess what I'm saying is, when people feel that their diversity is not an issue, when people feel as though they are included, then that is far more powerful for me than the leaders saying, this is how we believe diversity and inclusion should work. It has to be the other way around.
Absolutely concur. So what you're saying ultimately is that the inclusion piece is really the most important, making everyone feel welcome and demonstrating behaviours of inclusive management and leadership, and diversity to a degree. It really is. It's a mindset piece, isn't it? And
actually, I think it's like a two-way street. So I think it's not. I have less time for people that will complain that they don't feel included if they have not contributed to the definition of how things need to be in order for them to do. So what I'm saying is, yes, the leadership have a role to play, but I think equally the individuals have a role to play. Now, they need to be given the space to do that, but they need to define, what does inclusion mean to me? How does this need to be here in order for me to feel included? And when you put both ends of that together, then you have a far greater chance of creating an environment that is inclusive. And then the diversity piece will begin to take care of itself, because the more people from diverse backgrounds that feed into, this is what it will take for me to feel included, you then beginning to redefine how the environment should be. And if it's just done from one side, either from the leader side or from the individual side, one side alone cannot make that work, because no one side has the complete picture.
Absolutely. It's that, and it's almost like an ecosystem is what you're describing, where it's that fully well-rounded, well-versed, collaborative approach, as opposed to, one or the other, suggesting things must be a certain way. It's actually unearthing unique individual motivations, making sure that everyone contributes, and then looking to a solution once those pieces have been identified.
Yeah, so at the moment, I am only looking after Richard. But if I think back to when I've had groups, and even way back in my time when I had what people will call a real job in an organisation, one of the things that I did when people came to me, the first conversation we tend to have is at both sides. So I will be asking them, how do you expect me to behave as your coach or as your boss or as your leader? And
That's an interesting way to start. I like that.
Absolutely. For me, it's the only way to start. If I don't know what they're expecting of me, then how can I do that? So I ask them what they're expecting of me, and I ask them what they're prepared to give. Mm-hmm. I will ask them the same questions in reverse. So I will say what I'm expecting of them as an athlete and what I'm prepared to give. And then if we have a match on those, then we know we stand a fighting chance of moving things forward. I think organizationally, and that's what I was trying to get to, I think organizationally, I don't see those conversations happening anywhere near enough, where the leaders will be saying to people, how do you expect me to be? No, okay, big one, you can't be saying that to tens of thousands of people. But, if it cascades down through an organization, then I think that will be much more effective and will go a long way towards helping to move forward the diversity and inclusion piece, because at every level, people will be defining how they want things to be. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to 100% give everybody what they want, because that's not the way the world works. But it's the willingness and the ability to have the conversation.
No, I completely concur. That makes absolute sense. And, it's, I think back to individuals that I've worked closely with or organizations that I've observed. And I think perhaps the perception is very much about, oh, I'm a leader, I must be inspiring and motivating others. And not that piece is not important, but no point trying to motivate and inspire others if you're completely not aligned with their core center of value. So, that absolutely, that really does make complete sense. Asking people what they are prepared to give, because it's a two-way street, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's like anything, as a coach, I guess, maybe people expect, oh, right, okay, Keith is going to motivate me, this is it. And you're pushing it back on them and saying, no, do you know what, actually, what are you prepared to give? And then you match that. And, ultimately, hopefully it's then a very fruitful relationship.
Yeah, that's the plan. I like simple plans. It's a simple plan to me, and 9 times out of 10 it works beautifully.
And on that note, just about you personally, if you don't mind me asking, because I think you have a very fascinating background. And one thing that really resonated with me such a lot when you spoke at the event quite recently in Chester for the WLA, you said, I truly believe that I was put on this earth to be a coach. And I love that. I walked away kind of thinking about that with your voice ringing in my ears. And I was like, wow, actually, happiness is finding your purpose, isn't it? And so I wonder if I can ask you a little bit more about your personal background and how you came to be where you are today.
Well, I mean, I started off in technical roles in sort of computers and voice and data comms and stuff like that, and that was great. And then while all of that was going on, I'll tell you how long ago this was, Leila. I was working for a company, and they just launched local area networking stuff, the stuff that was like the forerunner of the internet. That's how long ago that was. But it was a very technical product, and they needed some people to be the go-between between those sort of boffins that live in darkened rooms and invent things, and the project managers, of which I was one, who actually have to go out and implement it to customer satisfaction. So I was chosen to be the one that dealt with the Midlands and the North. So I had a role for a period of time to train, upskill my project management colleagues, and I loved that. Obviously, when that came to an end, it was then back to my normal day job, and I was incredibly bored, because I thought, there was something around the development of individuals. I thought, really like that, but wasn't sure how I could take that further forward. So just carried on doing what I was doing. And then one thing led to another, and in that same period, I was doing more on the athletic side, some more coaching, and then it just, the two worlds just seemed to meet. And then I found myself shifting over into doing coaching and development work and conferences, keynotes within the business world. And really, that's sort of how it came about. And I clearly remember one day I was on the track at Alexander Stadium in my home stomping ground of Birmingham. And while the rest of the athletes were warming up, I just had this sense of, this is where I'm meant to be. This is what I'm meant to do. And I think everyone gets to that one. Not everyone gets. I think if we can get to that place where we are comfortable with what we are doing, where we feel we know what our purpose is. For me, I think that, particularly for leaders, I think that's really important. Mm-hmm. I think I guess my question would be, how can we authentically lead others if we are not sure about ourselves? Because then if we don't understand ourselves, there's every chance that we're shifting from persona to persona, from style to style, from role to role, and expecting people to just go, yes, that's genuine and authentic. I'll happily follow that. And just looking, it'd be like trying to follow a chameleon. Yeah, interesting, but difficult.
So no chameleon-led leadership here then, no.
I try not to, it's not that it's set in stone, but I just think if you have a level of certainty may not be right. If you have a level of, I'm going to go with certainty about where you're coming from as an individual, then that gives you a really great base to start from. Then whatever the world throws at you, you've got a starting point. You know how to respond to it. You know what matters to you. You know what your values are. You know what your principles are. You know how you want to behave, how you want to interact. It just gives you that really firm platform. And I think if you're still looking and searching for yourself, then all platforms look okay. And it makes it much easier to go, actually, you know what? That's not me, or I don't really want to do that or behave in that way or follow that lead. I will do what I want to do in my own way.
Oh, do you know, I couldn't agree more with that. I really, really couldn't. And, for me, I absolutely, when I found that purpose in myself, everything else fell into place. I truly believe I was put on this planet, as you said, because I went away thinking about this and kind of my head was buzzing, thinking, why was I put on the planet? I really think it is to share stories of fantastic leaders within the diversity and inclusion field and to really try and embrace and share that knowledge. I think the more that we can share and the more that we can embrace truly inclusive leadership and different, unique, wonderful stories, to motivate, inspire others, better. And the more we can really try and inspire future generations of leaders as well.
Yeah. And I think that, what tends to happen is it's so much easier to be defined by our roles. And so when the role changes, then it's like we put on a different cape and go out the door and now we're doing a different thing. If you're sure of yourself, doesn't matter what role you have. So, whether I'm in an organization, whether I'm on the track, whether I'm in a school, it doesn't matter. I'm me and I do what I do. The context may change, but where I'm coming from doesn't change. And that just gives me a level of confidence, a level of assurity, and a level of just going, I'll carry on doing what I'm doing.
And Keith, have you always had this confidence about you, if you don't mind me asking? Was there, if you were going to kind of give your, sorry, no. I'm asking, if you were to give advice to your younger self way back when, or if you were to give advice, to your children, because I know that you have kids, as well, what kind of advice might you give them when they are on their own personal path of trying to find their purpose and what it is that makes their heart sing?
I think, certainly if I was talking to my younger self, I'd like to think my younger self would actually listen to me, but that's not a given. But anyway, let's go beyond that. I think what I would, I think what I would say is almost, I'm not sure, almost pay attention to yourself more. When you're young and there's so much going on in the world, it's really easy to pay attention to everything that's out there and to see that everything, that maybe others are a lot better at certain things, or and just to doubt yourself, and actually to have that ability to set your own path, do your own things, and not to be as worried, and to fall into the trap, which is so easy to fall into, of being judged and judging yourself and everything as right or wrong. There is so much of it's right or it's wrong, it's good or it's bad. What I've learned, Stanley, is what I tend to look at now is things will go the way that things will go. For me, I look back at them and go, what can I learn from this? And once I've taken the learning from it, it's not always that easy, but then put it down and leave it alone and move on. And so, so often now you hear of, a lot of the challenges with the internet and social media and all of that, and youngsters having a really hard time of, they put stuff out there and it doesn't get liked, so then they feel unworthy. And then it's like, well, if you want to put it out there, put it out there. My question, what was the purpose of you putting it out there? If you put it out there because it was something you wanted to share, well, then you've shared it. You've done what you wanted to do. Great. Move on to the next thing. If you're putting it out there only because people then have to come back and say to you, I liked it, and that's where you're deriving your self-worth, then again, you're putting your perception of yourself in the hands of others. And that, to me, just makes no sense. So I guess the short version of the answer to your question would be put the perception of yourself in your own hands and far less in the hands of others. It doesn't mean don't pay attention to external feedback. That's not what I'm saying. But, at least 50-50, listen to what you think about yourself as opposed to it being massively skewed in the other way. Because I just don't see how that leads to you having control. It just means your locus of control is massively external. And that just, in that case, then whichever the way the wind blows, you're going to go with it. And you're going to feel affected by that. You have not got the ability to stand firm on your own patch of ground because you haven't put your own foundations down.
So really,
and I think increasingly, that's what leaders need to help people to do.
So really listening to your core and not being dissuaded or swayed too far by the constant circle of data and people's voices around you that, you're looking to seek that justification from.
Yeah. And as I say, no problem with putting stuff out there in the world and seeing what comes back. My question would always be, what's the balance? How are you looking at and appraising yourself?
What would you say is your secret to success? What would you say is your secret to success? Having now really made it to the top of your game as a performance and leadership coach.
You have some questions, don't you? Right. In a way, I guess the short answer is I don't see myself necessarily as being successful. I still have, I can look back and go, I've traveled a long way and I'm happy with how I've traveled and how I've progressed. I look forward and see there is still a long way to go. So I still have that same energy, drive, desire to try new things, have adventures, do whatever I need to do to move forward. I guess if I was to use an analogy, for me, it's a little bit, whether it's in terms of ability of working with others, coaching, whatever. For me, that's a little bit like circuit training. Lots of people in sport do circuit training from all different disciplines. If you're not very fit, you can try doing a circuit session, and before you get very far through it, you'll fall over and feel like you need to sort of sit down and recover because you're now tired. But if you keep on doing it, you get a little bit fitter. But the thing is, the fitter you get, the more you can do. So it never gets easy. The fitter you are, the harder you push yourself. Therefore, and so the harder you make it, and so the more you progress. So there is no upper limit. So I guess I don't see myself as yet, certainly not as yet, as being successful. There are still quite a few mountains I need to climb, quite a few areas I'd like to improve on, and it's that ability or that it's that way of looking at things to say, however good things are at the moment, they can always move forward. I can always do them better. I'm a constant tweaker, fidgeter. It's never, some things I do, I look back and go, I'm happy with that. But then as soon as I go, I'm happy with that, I'll be looking at it going, yeah, but that could have been maybe a little bit more, or maybe this way a little bit. And I think that just means I tend not to settle, and things keep evolving.
I like that expression. You're a constant tweaker. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And finally, before I
some of my colleagues in the past have described it differently.
What have they described it as?
I could not possibly say that on air, but yeah, I sort of got the point that they wanted me to leave it alone and just sit
down. Keith,
myself.
It's enough for today. Enough for today, Keith. No more. And finally, just before we say goodbye, and I summarise quickly for everyone, the fabulous conversation of today. Have there been any real key inspirations in your life that have really helped you along the way?
First, might sound corny, but my mom. I've got a son. He's almost a teenager now, and the amount of times I sort of sit down at the end of the day and go, I am tired. That was hard work entertaining him and keeping him on track and doing all the rest of it. My mom did that with 3 of us boys on her own, and how she managed to do that and keep us in order and get us to where we are now, I have absolutely no idea. I can't cope with 1 sometimes, and she had 3. So that was inspiring to me. I think also another, I sort of have read up on and look at the life of Malcolm X. Just the fact that he started in one place and finished in a completely different place. And that ability to not accept that you're on one path, that ability to look around and go, and accept the need that things can change, and actually look back and go, maybe my perception of that was not correct, and I'm willing to review it and have a look at it, is another. And then third would be when I first started many moons ago. I used to do a little bit of running myself, and the coach that used to look after us was a gent by the name of Pete Beanie, sadly no longer with us, and it was his way of working with us that really gave me a foundation for some of my own coaching philosophies, which I won't go into all of that now. But he was really instrumental in the way that I look at things in terms of that balance between support, challenge, hard work. And actually, when I joined Pete's group, it took me over 3 months before I could even finish a training session.
Really?
He would see me lying on the ground, absolutely bereft of oxygen, unable to stand up, and just look at me and go, that was tough, wasn't it?
Tough love.
And actually, but done in a way that made me want to get up and put it this way, I kept going back, and eventually I could do the work. And it's it's a philosophy that I've not really, it's a philosophy I've followed, and yeah, he was a great dude.
Thank you so much. That was really so inspiring, and I've really loved speaking with you. But for all of our listeners, do kind of try and consider, the what and the why, and some of the meanings in the work that you do, both personally and professionally. Try and stick with the belief that Keith has talked about today so profusely. And if you can, really try and secure that clarity on what it is that you're trying to achieve in terms of your purposeful leadership, both personally and also professionally. A key piece that I wrote down here that I thought was really, really interesting was, the how to behave as a coach, really asking those questions back. So for anyone who does have a performance coach, obviously Keith is fantastic, so get in touch with him on LinkedIn, and I will put the details on there. For anyone who is considering coaching or has a coach already, really think about what it is that you're prepared to give back, because it really is a two-way street, as we've learned today. And finally, before we say goodbye, do kindly check us out on Apple. You can download the podcast for free, or if you're on Android, you can also subscribe there. We're very grateful for any 5-star reviews that you might want to give us as well. So thank you very much in advance for that. And thank you very, very much again to Keith for very kindly being with us. Make sure you look him up on LinkedIn. And if you have any further questions, obviously, please do get in touch. My name is Leila McKenzie, and you have been listening to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.